President Trump is calling for schools across America to reopen in the fall as the CDC and the White House Coronavirus Task Force lay out guidelines to safely do so. I want to bring in Florida State Senator and Chair of the state's Education Committee, Manny Diaz Jr., for more on his state's plans. Hi, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Greta. Great to be on with you again.
What are the measures Florida is putting in place to safely reopen your schools in August and ensure the best learning environment for students?
So we are going to open our schools, and one of the things that's being done is putting in procedures and protocols for social distancing, no lunchtime. The common activities have been kind of eliminated. But the other thing we've done with this, the governor just put out an executive order waiving seat time, which will allow for some innovative options in the event that, number one, parents choose that they're not ready to bring their kids to school, or if there's an outbreak somewhere at a school, that way the schools will be able to continue learning without skipping a beat. And this will be, the requirement is that will be asynchronous learning, which means the kids will be learning the same thing that would be learned in the classroom, same curriculum, and teachers will have contact every day. So this is a great step forward to be prepared to open schools in August.
And you talk about that option to keep your kids home, but many parents, of course, may not be comfortable sending their children back to traditional public school amid this pandemic. Florida is a leading state on school choice. What other schooling options do those parents have in your state?
So there's a couple of options here. Number one, we have our traditional Florida virtual school, which is statewide and now has the capacity for 2.7 million students. So a student could be full-time virtual across the board. Or now with this new executive order, they can have either a full-time asynchronous learning where they're tapped into the actual classroom with their regular teacher, or something of a hybrid option or a blended option where they would go to school a couple of days a week or every other week, and then the rest of it would be due remotely online. But these plans have to be submitted by the schools, if in the case of charter schools and other schools, or by the district and be approved by the Department of Education to make sure that, again, the quality education is there. But ultimately, what Florida's done is what we usually do. We're putting the choice in the parents' hands to make the decision of whether they want to bring their child back to school in the fall or keep them in one of these innovative options.
White House officials have emphasized that reopening schools is not only essential for students' learning, but it's also essential for their mental and physical health. What dangers do children in Florida face if they cannot return to in-person learning in the fall?
Well, there's a couple of things, Greta, and you hit the nail on the head there. Number one thing that's not talked about during this pandemic is the mental health situation, both for adults, but especially for children who don't have the social structure to interact with other children, who have a lot of times trapped at home, and it may not be a great situation for economically or family-wise. And the other thing that happens is not having the social interaction and the learning going on in the structure starts to have a detrimental effect on that child's well-being. So a lot of these kids don't have a meal if they don't go to school a lot of times. And so that's another important factor that comes in here, especially in the lower socioeconomic areas. And those all have effects. A lot of these are dormant effects or quiet effects that a lot of folks are not talking about during the pandemic.
What are the impacts you expect to see among students as they do return to the classroom after having to switch to at-home learning for the end of this last school year?
So every year there's something that we call in education, we call summer loss, because kids, especially in lower socioeconomic areas where both parents are working, there's sort of a slide in the summer when they're away from school. Now we're going to have to deal with something additional to that, which is COVID loss, which means the time that they spent away, depending on what educational access they were given during the pandemic or the shutdown, then that varies district to district and state to state. How far behind they fell. And so, kids going in second or third grade, we're going to have to assess where they are, how far behind they are, and how do we bring them up to speed before even getting them going forward to where they need to be. So this is going to be a tough task, and we are all in it together. But I think that's why it's so important that for Florida to take the lead here and kind of follow President Trump's lead in making sure the schools are open. Even if it is with these innovative options.
All right, Florida State Senator Manny Diaz Jr. joining us to discuss the Sunshine State's plans to reopen schools this fall. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.